I call Chris Bishop.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, it's been a great start to the year for the government, but it's clearly been a very bad start to the year for the Green Party. I have heard some poor speeches in this House in the short time I've been in the House, but I have never seen or heard such a spite-filled, hate-filled pile of bile like we just heard from Gareth Hughes. And it's that speech that demonstrates precisely why the Green Party is going nowhere in politics. Sir, it's been a great start to the year for the government and indeed a great start to the year for the country, because the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal was signed just a few days ago, hugely significant for New Zealand and its future, a proud day for New Zealand, the apex of trade and foreign policy in New Zealand. The National Party knows that. The former leader of the Labour Party, Phil Goff, knows that, and former leaders, I should say, to this House, Phil Goff, Helen Clark, Mike Moore and David Shearer, they all know that, Mr Speaker. The only person, it seems, on the in New Zealand who doesn't seem to know that is Andrew Little. So the question really has to be asked, who are we going to trust to tell us the truth about the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Is it the doyen of the Liberal left, Helen Clark? Is it Phil Goff? Is it Mike Moore? Is it David Shearer we're going to trust, along with credible people like the neutral and independent public servants who work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade? Are we going to place our faith and reliance upon former Labour leaders and Prime Ministers, including our own? Or are we going to place our trust in Jane Kelsey, who doesn't support any free trade deal New Zealand has ever signed? She doesn't support the Korean deal, she doesn't support CER, she doesn't support the China Free Trade Agreement, sir. Are we going to trust her? My answer to that is no. Are we going to trust the noted independent commentator, Barry Coates, who's been going around representing Oxfam New Zealand and putting out economic commentary on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and keeps being reported by the media as an independent commentator, even though he's next on the Green Party list? Are we going to trust him? I don't think so. So it's been a great start to the year for the government, sir, but the Labour Party's also released some policy. You'd be forgiven for not really noticing it. In keeping with their stance on the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal, Labour has released a policy that is regressive and back to the future, right back to the 1970s. And isn't it revealing about their political priorities? Because they come down here to the House every day and they talk about child poverty. And then they suddenly invent $1.3 billion. And what do they spend their $1.3 billion that they've just materialised out of thin air? What do they spend it on? What does the Labour Party spend it on? Not child poverty. No. They come in and they say, no, the real problem facing this country is that people who leave school, who leave Auckland Grammar and go to Auckland University, the real problem is they have to borrow $5,000 for a law degree per year. That's the real issue. I know, we'll give them 3 free years tertiary education, even though people who leave university with tertiary education earn far more than people who don't go to university, and they pay those loans back and they contribute to the economy. There are private and public benefits from tertiary education, and it's only fair that people make a contribution. And I hear Carmel Sepuloni bleating away over there. She has said some really silly things on this topic, because her point is that people in the 1970s got free tertiary education. Yes, that is true. Not completely free. It was very cheap to go to university in the 1970s. But the reality, as I pointed out to her via Twitter, the reality is very few people went to university. Right. So yes, kids from white middle-class families who got their bursaries went to university. Guess who didn't go? Maori children, Pacifica children, kids from poor backgrounds. What has the student loan scheme done? The student loan scheme is one of the most progressive, equitable policies ever implemented by any government in New Zealand history. And guess who started it? Phil Goff. Student fees and student loans are a legacy of the reforming, progressive administration of the 4th Labour government, because it shares the cost burden of tertiary education. It recognises there are not just public benefits to tertiary education, there are private benefits. And not only are there private benefits where you ask people to make a contribution, then we wipe the interest on their loans. So it's an extremely generous system, and it's massively expanded access. That's why there are more Maori at university, it's why there are more Pacifica at university, and it's why they're succeeding under this government. The student loan scheme is something the Labour Party should be proud of. They should not try and dismantle it through back to the future 1970s policies.